Thanks so much, Lee. Now, the second conference of the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, or SAMEA, in partnership with the Public Service Commission, the PSC, was held on the 17th to the 21st of August. The mission of the conference was to create a community that supports and strengthens the development of monitoring and evaluation in South Africa. The conference was attended by a wide range of practitioners, commissioners and thinkers to promote common values of transparency, accountability and learning. These values are essential for good governance and true democracy. To talk more on this, we're joined by Mamaroba, Malahlela, Commissioner at the Public Service Commission, and Indran, Naidoo, Deputy Chairperson for the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, SAMEA. Thanks so much for both of you for coming through this morning. I think let's just look at the conference itself, or what the mandate of SAMEA is, Indran.
The main mandate of SAMEA is to promote a professional evaluation community in South Africa, and that involves training people on how to do evaluation, and also help them in terms of the strategy for monitoring and evaluation. In other words, how do we evaluate and take these results to the decision makers in order to improve the lives of people? All
right, it's essentially intelligence gathering and research that would influence policy, but looking at particularly issues that we have around service delivery and discontent around that, from the Public Service Commission, how then do you turn these results into policy and procedures that are effective?
Well, I can say simply that everything in life is about monitoring and evaluation. When you wake up and dress and put up makeups and so on and so forth. Now, as the Public Service Commission, what we do is to investigate everything else that happens within government departments and ultimately advise them on what the good practices are, in relation to what these different departments do. And to a large extent, all of those recommendations that would make as a commission would ultimately feed into the executive level of making policy decisions. So that is why for us it was important to partner with SAMEA to get a whole array of individuals who practices in monitoring and evaluation to help determine policy for our government.
All right, now the conference, or the biennial conference, has now become something that is documented, and obviously a lot has come out of that. But in terms of the highlights and deadlines, what are the priorities from your viewpoint, Indran?
I think the main priority is to ensure that the findings which have been produced by the Public Service Commission now are used in a way that is meaningful. But more important, a highlight was the emphasis on participatory evaluation. In other words, working out what is happening at the community, the problems, etc., so that you preempt some of the service delivery issues that you have. But if intelligence gathering is good, then one shouldn't have a point where you reach a crisis. So a lot of the discussion was, how do we use evaluation to improve service delivery and improve the lot of people?
But isn't it also actually going around in circles? Because just on the surface, it seems quite evident and obvious what the issues are at community level, and also the inefficiencies when it comes to a government being able to feed into those needs. Why then do you still need to have sort of a caucus around what the problems are? Shouldn't we know at this stage, Mamaroba?
Well, we definitely are aware of what is the reason behind some of these protests. And it was not necessarily a talk show as we gathered in SAMEA. To cut a long story short, everybody else was saying, let's move away from the definition of what is output, what is outcome, and sit down and say, what does MNE, or monitoring evaluation, impact on the lives of ordinary people? If we have time, I'll talk to you about a presentation made by a senior lecturer from Botswana, who gave us an indication of what they used in Botswana on MNE to help NGOs in Botswana deal with the crisis of HIV and AIDS with regard to donor money that was given to those NGOs. So that, in essence, was a simple story of how these methodologies of monitoring and evaluation can help turn around communities who are involved in changing the lives of people and working them for the better. So a whole lot of discussions that went there were not necessarily about elitist issues. but we're about how do we respond.
Well, but it's good and well, but don't we spend a lot of effort talking about the issues and very minimum action in implementing those? And I understand that you need to obviously thoroughly investigate and make sure that you have your checks and balances and resources, etc. But at the end of the day, if it's not felt at grassroots level, then it just becomes a lot of talk.
Look, from our side, we have to help government understand what are the problems related to service delivery protests. But it then has to be the decision of either politicians or the executive to then say, based on what they have, based on what we've been able to feed to them, what do they do with it? For example, from the PSC side, we have said and taken a decision that we're going to look at all of these complaints that came to our side, either about service delivery, about complaints in departments, package them, give them to the executive, give them to Parliament and say, for the past 6, 4, 5 months, these were the problems that we dealt with at the Commission level. Look at them and then decide whether in some of these things that came our way, there are issues that we can be able to find and respond to as a catalyst to what would be the protests that are taking place today in the country.
How do we deal with issues of accountability and transparency? Because you just have to open the papers and, you know, there's always some issue around corruption, lack of service delivery, maladministration. Should I go on?
From a SAMEA perspective, the issue of accountability and transparency is extremely important. And I think what this conference did, it gave voice to sectors that previously were doing evaluation, but the evaluations were not taken to the decision makers. In other words, we had the research and academic sector, the NGOs, civil society were strongly represented in the conference. And throughout the conference, they made it very clear what is happening to the evaluation findings. You are quite correct, Cindy, that there's been a lot of research, but have it now translated into findings? And that was a dilemma that was actually facing the people in the 50 sessions that were presented, because evaluation the world over is a problem. It's difficult to ensure that your findings are immediately translated. But there was a commitment from the PSC and from government sector that they would take it seriously. And we're also now going to track the implementation of recommendations.
But it's not something new, though. I mean, obviously you'd have to have performance measurement tools in place in order to evaluate whether you're effective at the job that you're doing. But I mean, if you're taking it from leadership or even the culture that seems to be out there that says, one, I can loot, or one, I can just have some frivolous excuse as to why certain things happen in my department, i.e., well, I only started last year, or I only work here, or, you know, how then do we make sure that there's a paradigm shift and a more conscious effort in terms of implementing some form of responsibility?
The conscious effort in terms of implementing responsibility is an issue that is left to those who must decide, either at the level of executive authority, whether to then say, if Cindy is not performing, let's show her the door. If Malahlela is not performing, let's show her the door. Let's show him the door. But the question is, from our side, we do everything in our power to say, this is the product of what we've been able to investigate. If Cindy as an HOD does not disclose her financial interest, we'll show it. If Indran as an HOD does not necessarily interact with his or senior management level to disclose their financial interest, we'll show it. But ultimately, it's not us who must act upon all of these findings. Parliament and the executives must ultimately say, these are the things that we found out, let's act.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but what do you hope will happen next?
I think most certainly you now have a critical mass in terms of people who know what is going on, but through their constituencies can put on pressure to ensure that not only is there transparency, but also accountability. I think an issue that was raised quite strongly in the conference, the consequences of non-performance, and that is what you are relating to. If there are no consequences to non-performance, then you will have service delivery and poor performance continuing. And unless you start seeing, in a very visible way, action based on poor performance, things may not change. And that was quite strongly expressed by the non-government sector, and of course SAMEA as a professional body. We're
going to have to leave it there, but thank you both for coming through this morning. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we were speaking to Mamaroba Malahlela. He's the Commissioner at Public Service Commissioner, and Indran Naidoo, who's Deputy Chairperson for the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, or in short, SAMEA. You can send us your comments, sunrise@etv.co.za. Otherwise, we'll try and get your website where you can access the results of the second biennial South African Monitoring and Evaluation Conference, which was held earlier this month. Let's take a quick ad break. We're back at 6:30 with the latest news headlines.